All right, hello everybody. How's it going? This is John Wydogen, and this is Natural Freedom League. Naturalfreedomleague.com is our website. Here with my producer and co-host, Will Keller.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back.
What's up, Will?
How's it going, brother?
Good. I know it's a busy day for you.
It's go, 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 but I like it like that. So
Yeah,
aggressive action. Let's do
exactly.
it.
All right, so we're here on, I believe, episode 7 with my good friend, Suzanne Roberts. Hello, Suzanne.
Hello, John.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Our episode today is called Detachment Activism. Detachment activism is a concept that I came up with from, it's basically just a way of describing something that already exists, but taking poetic license, I guess you could say. And I got it from Taoism, where they have the concept of action through inaction, sort of like just by letting the way be the way and let things change, and kind of the middle way philosophy of Buddhism. And in Buddhism, they also talk a lot about detaching from the illusion, and that the more you can detach from that illusion, you get closer and closer to the essence of what everything is, the truth. And I found this in my own life, a practice of letting things go, slowly detaching from the things that, didn't serve me, like smoking cigarettes, drugs, vices, improving myself in that way. And so then also another connection was the experience with the health freedom movement, and the fact that realizing that all of these people can go and they can protest and they can call their senator and try to work through the system, and there is no political solution. Those people, the system isn't there to help you. So I always thought, if we could just detach from these systems, that would be a bigger statement, a boycott of sorts. So anyway, in thinking this way, and it's an evolution of things you let go of, I became closer friends with Suzanne, who was my neighbor when I was growing up. And we found out we had a lot in common with these types of topics. And Suzanne has led me to a lot of amazing information. I'd like to think I've shown her some too. And but she's the one who introduced me to Mark Passio. So, but Suzanne has taken a lot of steps actually in her own life to detach from the system. So she likes to call it politely exiting the system, and she wrote up a lot of good information. So we're just going to go right off the bat. Step 1, stop feeding the beast. Suzanne, what is the beast?
So the beast generally is the corporations. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that our governments, every last one of them, are also incorporated entities. And as incorporated entities, they operate under hierarchy, they create statutes, and if you're considered an employee of theirs, then you're subject to their statutes. So when we get into the law a little bit later on, this is a key factor of how they can have the control over us that doesn't make any sense. So the beast is the corporations. Most large corporations are currently leading us directly into fascism and totalitarian control. I mean, imagine what we've gone through in the last 8 months. Did anybody think this could happen?
We did.
You look around. Well, I knew it could happen, but the speed, the consistency, the fact that all around the world, it just lockstep, which is actually one of their plan names from 2010. The Rockefeller Foundation put out the lockstep plan. And that's what we're seeing, is the lockstep. Every country's doing things pretty much the same way, a little different flavors of things, but for the most part, it's the same thing. And even in the government, what you see them arguing, isn't do we lock down or do we not lock down? It's for how long and how strict. And, basically, do you want red paint on your cell wall or blue paint on your cell wall? Rather than should we have a cell? Right? So,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the beast operates on our consent. So if we don't give them our consent, they end up dead in the water. So what my politely exiting the system is pretty much about all the different ways you withdraw your consent and you get back to the truth of the matter. And as one of my favorite podcasters always says, is there's no lie in nature. So if you're looking for truth, just look to nature. You'll find it there.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
For sure. I'll touch on that real quick. Yeah, I mean, just that quote, it makes so much sense. If you look in the natural world at the models of what works, nature works at perfection, meaning the laws of nature. And that's really the system that humanity should be looking up to and mimicking, or better yet, become in harmony with, and apply that to themselves and to how we structure society. Yeah, there is no lie in nature. And these corporations, what people need to understand is that they have to really dive in deep to this information. If you're just taking information from what you heard and what the television is telling you, you have tunnel vision. You're in a small little box that they put you in. So they have these think tanks. They're giving you the illusion of choice by creating the dialectic of sides, whether that be just two different corporations or parties or just two different entities. It's still, they're working as a whole unit against the most powerful system, which is the people. So, it's something to take in and digest, and it is quite the journey, but extremely important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I would add, it's the people under nature, the people under God. It's like, it's that model that, like, they don't want us to know. They want the people under the state, in place of God.
There you
And
go.
So Suzanne wrote a section on what it looks like, and of course it looks like detaching from the system, not supporting large corporations.
Right.
And yeah, so Suzanne, go into that.
Yeah, so there's many ways to stop feeding the beast. In the next tonight and then the next time we talk, we can go through some specifics of what I've called the 5 big areas, which is law, education, healthcare, banking, and food. So there's more than that, but these are the areas that are the nearest and dearest to my heart. Some of them I've been basically living my entire adult life the way I'm recommending, and others I've just recently become educated properly on, which is the law situation and how we can use it to reclaim our freedoms. So with not feeding the beast, you want to think about how are you spending your money, right? The money is the foundation of the beast. And we need to, it's like it's food, right? So we just have to think about where we're spending the money. I admit I still use Amazon, but mostly it's because I can't find stuff anywhere else except there. And the stuff that I do purchase there, I figure in the long run is benefiting me because I'm getting all my ducks in a row for what's coming. But as a general rule, I go to a small local place first, although our local ACE just shut down to make room for a pharmacy, which we need another one of course.
Wow.
So it is getting harder and harder. It's going to take a little bit of effort, but we can do it. You know, you might pay a few more dollars for something, which isn't for everybody, but if you can do it, consider doing it.
Right. And you were talking about how, you know, it starts with educating yourself through a wide variety of different non-corporate sources, which Will was kind of touching on. You know, you have to get your information from more than just the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is going to conspire to keep you in that system. That's what it's there for. That's who it is an arm of, you know. It's so anyway, we're going to get into what Suzanne was saying, the big five: law, healthcare, education, banking, and food. And we're going to start with healthcare and food, because we think those two kind of go together, and healthcare can kind of be an easy one to get out of. For example, I have not had insurance for a couple of years now because I never went to the doctor. And I figured, well, if I have an emergency, knock on wood, then I can go to the county hospital and get that taken care of if necessary, and I can pay out of pocket instead of paying these insurance companies monthly for a service I'm not even using. It's a terrible deal. You're still paying so much out of pocket, and I never really understood all the healthcare plans anyway. But then you know, going to these doctors that are, you know, like we go to an anthroposophic doctor, naturopaths who are more inclined towards preventing illness instead of the allopathic approach. So, but people are very scared of pulling out of healthcare, right? It seems like a scary thing to do. So, Suzanne, you have some information on some alternative healthcare?
Yeah, so one of the alternatives, well, there's always the alternative of having nothing, right? And you just find your holistic practitioners, you pay for them out of pocket. If you have assets to protect, house, car, big savings, that's not necessarily your best option, because if you do rack up some big bills from, say, a heart attack or accident, the hospital can attach a lien on your house. So that's not what you want. So there is the health share co-ops, which are written into the Obamacare plan as an alternative to conventional insurance. Whether they'll stay there or not, I don't know. But that gets into a whole another aspect of, do you really care, right? Which is when we get into the law part, that'll make a little bit more sense. But these health share co-ops, they're founded in Christian, biblical, you know, take care of your brother kind of concept, where, you know, the community just comes together to pool their resources. And if somebody has something dramatic happen, there it is, it's all there. So these health share co-ops pool the money. They're not insurance. They don't even pretend to be insurance. And when people have issues, they're covered up to a certain amount. And if their issue goes beyond that, then they may put out a plea to the group to donate a little bit more. So I pay my monthly share. So for my family of 4, it's $355, I believe. And that's a $2,500 deductible, $125,000 coverage per incident. So I also donated an extra $15 a month just in case somebody else comes up short on something. So these are very affordable plans compared to the probably $1,800 a month I'd be at if I were still at Kaiser with the $6,500 deductible. That's their cheap plan for the family of 4. So it's a really good option if you don't want to just go it alone, like John is. but you don't want to do insurance. So if you just, do a search for health share co-ops, they're pretty much all the ones I found are Christian based. If that concerns you, you can find one or two that aren't so heavy on the biblical stuff. But for me, I live under that Christ consciousness, so it works for me. There's lots of other things. Going to the hospital is putting you at risk, because once you're in their clutches, they tend to have some sort of legal control over you, right? You can't leave until you're, what do they call it? Not released, but if you get admitted, you have to be signed out effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially, can you imagine how it is now?
Right.
You probably have to get tested.
Mm-hmm. And
So-
if you take your kids in, you really can't take them out until you've been discharged. That's what the word is that I'm looking for. I ran into this when I had to take my son in, and they threatened me. And other parents, it's like, well, this isn't a prison. You're free to go at any time. However, there's always that threat of CPS, hanging over your head. So
Yeah.
definitely want to avoid the hospitals if you can. The whole business with the early high death rates from COVID was because hospital policy was to put people on a ventilator, which most doctors know kills people. So hospital policy was to basically kill people. And and there was nobody allowed in to speak for you at those points. So healthcare is, it's one of the main control systems of the beast. So if you look at who's locking us down, who's putting out all these rules, it may come from the governor's mouth or the mayor, but it's from rules written up by the health agencies. And these are unelected agencies, right? Fauci, we can't unelect Fauci. He's just up there being appointed by whoever appoints him. So and there's all sorts of laws being written too that give the health agencies ridiculous amounts of power. So I know, John, if you remember a couple of years ago, I think it was the AB 62 that passed very quietly. Nobody protested.
It was, you mean AB 262. It was last year, right? Yeah. It was with SB 276, the one that gave them like quarantine power to the public health agency.
Pretty much any means they deem necessary.
Right. Three or more people would be considered an outbreak, and it had language saying that they could destroy your property, take a person out of it's exactly what's happening. And that's why I said we knew, because I was just thinking about like how much I was saying this to my family. Eventually they're gonna come in your house and vaccinate you in your home, and no one wanted to listen to us. And even now they act like I didn't say it. But
yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
The healthcare system is one of the strong arms for the beast, right? Because it feeds off your ignorance and your fear, the fear of death, your health. If you don't have the proper knowledge on how the body correctly works, then they're taking advantage of that. Not to mention allopathic medicine is just treating symptoms, and pretty much a failing system of medicine.
Right.
It's a setup, big pharma, and it's another corporation, and taking advantage of people's ignorance and fear. So
Suzanne likes to say it's actually working exactly how it's supposed to.
It's working just the way it was designed.
Exactly.
We're not the real beneficiaries.
Yeah.
What was I just gonna say?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
That's okay, it'll come back to me.
Well, it is funny. Oh, go ahead.
The CDC, by their own statistics, medical the healthcare system is the third leading cause of death. Now, I personally know that that's grossly underreported because I had family members pass away from medical, prescription over prescribing,
Mm,
and
Yeah.
that didn't go on the death certificate.
yeah.
Right.
They're
Well,
immune. They
and
have
with
immunities.
Right.
and with COVID, it's even they're just all those deaths that would have gone that actually are against the hospital. They're all calling it COVID now.
And they're not tracking the flu anymore. Did you know that?
Yeah, I bet. Oh, jeez.
So, nothing's going to be the flu anymore. Anyway, so back to my list. So stop buying health insurance, use the health share co-op, or just nothing at all, depending on your circumstances. Stop buying into the medical norms of annual physicals, vaccines, and pharmaceuticals to maintain health. What I've discovered in my life and all the people I see around me is the people who consume the most healthcare are the least healthy. You go to a doctor, they find something. If you didn't go and they didn't find it, would it be a problem? From all the research I do, more often than not, no. These cancers, a lot of these cancers grow so slowly that you'll die of old age before you die of the cancer. But, they find cancer and within a week, they've got you in there chemoed and surgery, and, you don't have time to think. You're just freaked out because all they give you is gloom and doom, and here's your odds of survival. And if you had just done nothing, there's research that shows you'd be better off.
Yeah, I think, and educating yourself too, right? It's your health, it's your body, it's your responsibility to have, some knowledge of how your body works. And I always tell people when they go to the hospital, they go to the doctor, I said, look, nobody knows your body better than you do. Well, it should be that way, but just because someone is in a white coat and you believe that they're the authority on your body, you're just a number on the daily list, and they can't even look you in the eye, and 5-minute visits.
Right.
Don't take that as fact.
And how many times have we heard, well, the doctor gave me 30 days and I lived 20 more years, right?
Yeah.
I've heard those stories over and over and over again. What the doctor says, there's no cure for this. It's like, no, that's not true. Maybe if your arm gets cut off, there's no cure for that in our current world. I'll give you that one. But almost everything else has been cured by people in a variety of ways, right?
Yeah.
Either they just set their mind to healing, the power of the mind. They go to alternative therapies. There's just a million ways to heal yourself.
Eating healthy.
Eating healthy.
Yeah.
That's a red flag right there, right? When you have these so-called authorities on the news telling you what you should do for your health, and they never talk about diet, minerals, sun. It's like all of these effective and beneficial modalities that have been since the beginning of time, pretty much, that humans have adopted, discovered, and passed down. Healing modalities, herbalism, there's a whole list. They continue to be superior all the way through. It's just that people don't have the knowledge and to discover these and apply them, because they're putting their faith and their belief into a system that has been given to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, it's like they think the whole idea, I said this last week, but your immune system is a conspiracy theory now. It's like herd immunity is like, they're like, no, it's like, it's not a real thing, and that's a dangerous theory. And it's like, what?
Except last year it was the only theory.
Right.
That's what was beating us over the head with the vaccine mandates.
Right, exactly. The fake herd immunity. So yeah, we could go on about pharmaceuticals. Definitely getting yourself off of pharmaceutical drugs, going to more natural products.
Yeah, weaning yourself off the pharmaceuticals, I think, is probably the biggest one, because when people get off these things, they feel better. They don't,
Yeah.
you know, why are people having strokes at such young ages? I'm convinced it's the pharmaceuticals giving them these strokes at, 30, 40, 50 years old, and the heart attacks. I remember many years ago, one of my coworkers' husband just suddenly died of a massive heart attack at 43 years old. I'd never heard of such a thing. And now, of course, I come to find out that, we had this painkiller called Vioxx that caused massive fatal heart attacks in people of all ages. They finally had to pull it off the market, but not after it killed some exorbitant number of people, like 500,000 people.
Yeah.
But this was something that was approved by our FDA, right? So farther down in the document, we talk about the capture of the agencies. So all these 3-letter agencies that are here to support us, they're being run, they're the foxes guarding the hen house. So if people can understand that these agencies are not looking out for our interests, that's a belief that when you get past that belief, the whole world can open up for you.
It's so obvious. It's so obvious. The ex-head of Moderna is in charge of Operation Warp Speed. And what's one of the 2 vaccines that is about to be rolled out is, Moderna, which is Bill Gates and Fauci. They're both connected to it. So, educating yourself on many alternative modalities, chiropractic, naturopathic, anthroposophic medicine. The doctor that we go to when we go, she came and gave a talk one time to a group of us where she kind of just showed us like how to care for a fever, in a natural way. It was like a leg wrap with like
A foot wrap
or something like that.
Yep.
Your kid, because she was coming from the perspective of being concerned for people who weren't vaccinating their kids, that to have less fear of like a fever or something like that. But of course we know that fevers are actually good and it's a sign of your body working. But again,
fevers need to be encouraged and supported.
That's all conspiracy talk.
Well, it's the weird thing. Our creator gave us this body with this immune system, and it all knows what to do. And we don't mess with it. It's kind of weird that way.
Yeah. So that ties in directly to food. So Suzanne, I know that you have there's people come by your house and pick up food. You're involved with a lot of different ways to obtain food, right?
Yeah, so on my front porch, I host a CSA. It's a community supported agriculture. And the woman who runs it, she developed relationships with, so this is a meat and dairy based CSA. The one people traditionally know about are fruit and vegetable CSAs. So you can pretty much get most of what you need delivered to your door if you know where to look. So right here in the Bay Area, we have realfoodbayarea.com. So they will deliver raw milk, raw cheeses, grass-fed beef, pastured chickens, pork, all the food grown properly the way nature intended it, where the animals eat what they're supposed to eat. They don't eat GMOs, corn and soy, plastic pellets, whatever, antibiotic laden stuff. They're not standing in their own waste. They're roaming the fields and getting the sunshine and having a happy life up until the point that we eat them. But it's important that they have an unstressed life, because if we do choose to eat meat, we're eating the energy of that animal. And if that animal's had a horrible stress life with no nutrition, then we're taking in that energy in addition to, the typical nutrients that we understand.
That's the law of assimilation.
Yeah. So the quality of our food is hugely important. And what drives me nuts is all these studies that you see on the news about, oh, red meat's bad for you. Okay, well, are you talking about conventional red meat, like where the cows are, nose to nose and up to their knees in their own poop? Or are you talking about grass-fed red meat, which is a completely different food? Absolutely, utterly, completely different. Their essential fatty acid ratios are different. I mean, everything about them is different. So even these studies that we hear can't really be taken at face value. You have to dig deeper. I've never seen them, for the most part, talk about quality of food. If you want studies that actually look at quality of food, the West India Price Foundation is really good at providing unbiased scientific information. So they get their funding from the supporters. Most of these studies, most of our science comes from corporate funding, and they have biases. And if you don't give them the right answer, they're not going to give you the next grant. So, we need to think about these things when we're looking at food studies, health studies. It's all part of the tangled web
Yeah.
of interconnected control that isn't always obvious. So let me,
Yeah, and getting those food sources from, smaller farmers and, local, that works toward building that network that we're going to need when we have to be sustainable outside of the system, the beast, right?
right.
So, Will, you know a lot about food. You do like foraging, right?
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's something that I think anybody could pick up. It's fun, especially if you have kids. You can go to the library or order a book, and you get a foraging book in your local area, and you can go out into nature. And a lot of these foods grow right in front of your house. If you're not throwing chemicals and poison on your lawn or the land around your house. Like what's the staple for like the worst plant? It's a dandelion. They call it a weed. You could see it. It's always on bottles of chemicals and all that stuff. And dandelions are one of the most beneficial and medicinal plants, and they're
Absolutely.
edible, the full plant. But and nature's abundance. So there's actually food to eat, extremely healthy and vitamin and mineral dense foods all around us. So yeah, I love going out into nature and taking my daughter and identifying plants and just taking in that information.
One thing that's very interesting about, little sidetrack here about what grows in your yard is, first of all, the most invasive and hardest to kill weeds are always the most medicinal too.
Totally.
So nature created that very wisely. And the other interesting thing is the things that tend to pop up in your environment are things that somebody in your family probably needs. Right. So
Right.
I've heard stories of people talk about how when their partner was sick with cancer, all of a sudden, I'm drawing a blank on the weed. It's the one that's kind of sharp.
Milk thistle.
No, I mean, it's very pretty. It starts with a C, but when you go to pull it, it like slices you.
Mm.
Um, anyways, it started popping up all over her yard. And then after her partner passed away, the weed went away. And this is a weed that doesn't go away once it's there, like it's there.
Yeah.
But the need for it to be there went away. And so it stopped growing there. So
Yeah.
I pay attention now
Fascinating.
to what volunteers in my yard a lot, because it's like, well, clearly somebody in my family needs that.
For
So
sure.
yeah.
And also, eating to your own demographic, eating locally. In Brentwood, in my area, it's a big farming town. So making these connections with the farmers and going to the farmers markets and buying locally at the farm stands and supporting these local farmers is huge. But eating foods that are grown in your area and
Mhm.
during the season that you're in, so eating seasonal is
Absolutely.
extremely beneficial. You're in the biorhythm between your body and the earth is in sync, and you're giving your body what you need at the certain time. I think, and when you eat that way, seasonal and within your demographic, your allergies can go away, all that stuff. So
Yeah. Um, and now with what's coming with the Great Reset, and some of the predictions of food shortages, which are becoming mainstream. So once things hit mainstream, it's like, things like this, I think it's probably going to happen. So what you want to do now is create the local demand with your local farmers, establish those supply chains so that they know that they're needed and that people will be there to buy their stuff. Because when we start going to the grocery store and the shelves are getting empty, like we saw it for a little bit in March, but we all knew that that was just a temporary thing. Um, but apparently what's coming for the dark winters, they like to say, is a little bit more dramatic. So what people need to do is start thinking about, what food can I grow in my own yard right now? And even if all you have is a balcony, or maybe even no balcony, you can grow sprouts, right? So you need some sort of greens every day. Those are really important. So just grow some sprouts in a windowsill to get yourself some greens, you know? Um,
in a mason jar, just a mason jar right on
yeah,
your windowsill, you can
they're
grow
highly
sprouts in
nutritious.
just
You'll
days.
know the quality of them. You'll know they weren't sprayed, or, you know, the food industry has a way of ruining everything they put their hands on, right? So you want to buy the food from them as little processing as possible, because what's come to light is they don't even have to put on the label everything they put in the food. Something
It's
like,
not even food.
right, food like objects. I don't call it food anymore, but
It's like chemicals.
yeah, we need to, learn how to prepare food.
Yeah.
It's a lost art. So make it simple. Some days it's like, okay, a meat, a starch, a vegetable. Just kind of rotate what you get. And then you get bored with that. Okay, well, maybe this will be casserole week, because casseroles are easy. You just throw everything in the pan, you cook it, you throw everything in a crock pot, you let it cook all day. There's a lot of easy ways to cook. It's not gourmet. You're not going to be getting 5 stars for it from your family, but they'll be getting nutrition and they'll be getting satiation. And
That's
those
like
are important.
that's like I should be making my own iced coffee, but look, I'm a hypocrite. I'm drinking Jack in the Box iced coffee.
Yeah.
It's funny. One time when we were at the Great Highway, there was a guy who came up and talked to us, and he kept, he was really, nice about his approach. He was like, "Yeah, I wish more people would stop and just listen to what you're saying." But he was definitely in the system and couldn't really imagine what we were talking about. And he kept talking about, well, what about the market? Who's going to control the market if you don't have government? And I was just thinking, do we really need the big market like that? And then I was saying, do we really need big agriculture? Is that something we all asked for? No, it wasn't something we asked for. It's something they monopolized, took over, killed the small farmers, said, they created this idea of scarcity, where if it was local people just growing food in their yards, we'd have abundance. We have abundance.
If you look at the free market principles, it only works with small local producers. Because let's say I've got a cottage industry where I make meals and sell them to my neighbors. If I get lazy and I end up poisoning somebody from, like, the man who sat out too long in the heat, well, they're going to know exactly where that food came from. And they're going to come back to me, and they're probably going to tell their friends, I got food poisoning from her meal. Well, what's that going to do to my business from my, what's the word, negligence? It's going to crush me. So I'm going to be really careful not to poison anybody.
Yeah.
But you look at the big ag, they combine meat from, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of cows, so that if it's got E. coli, they're throwing out millions of pounds of meat because they don't know where it came from. It all got piled in together and then spread around the country, and then people get sick here and there and here. And I mean, it's grossly inefficient. But again, it's all by design,
Right.
you know?
For sure.
So small providers don't need regulation from the government. They just don't. It's self-correcting. That's the beauty of it. So all of these things, you know, when you work in harmony with nature and free market and all the libertarian or natural law principles, however you want to look at it, they all have self-correcting feedback loops built into them. And that's what makes them so fabulous and sustainable and elegant and simple, right? You don't need all this complexity and bureaucracy and overhead. That never works,
Yeah.
as we can see.
That's ultimately what it comes down to is sustainability. Government wants
Right.
them to be the middleman between you and your sovereignty and your ownership, taking care of yourself. They want to, dictate your health, your food, all that, education,
Mm-hmm.
your children. So, it's out there. And a real intrinsic value would be knowledge on how to grow food, preserve food, canning, and all that, carpentry, all these skills. That to
Right.
me is real intrinsic value.
Well,
Absolutely.
and the great part about it is, as you detach, you are developing, right? So if you detach from the food industry, you have to start cooking your own food. That's a benefit, right? Now you're cooking your own food, you're eating healthier. Now your health starts to improve. As you detach, you see these positive benefits to doing so that maybe you didn't really consider before, and that's an awesome part of it.
Yeah. For a lot of people, just changing from a processed food diet to a real food diet can heal all sorts of issues. So many issues. I've
Food
seen.
is
medicine.
It's always been the thing that has helped me. Any kind of ache or pain, if I just like eat better and lose some weight, goes away.
Yeah. Especially
So
something like, just cutting out conventional wheat because it's so saturated with Roundup. When people cut that out, a lot of problems go away. It's hard to do. Some people can do organic wheat and not have the problems because the Roundup isn't in there, at least not to the degree it is in the other stuff. But there's all sorts of subtleties about this. But basically, we just need to get back to the foundations. To take this all a step further for the food, when you grow your own, it's not always, doesn't always work that well. I've been struggling the last few years with my garden. I finally hired some permaculture guys to come in, and they did a really good soil prep, and they sprayed compost tea, and all of a sudden it's like all this beautiful green stuff growing again. And so
that's cool.
Sometimes you might need a little bit of help,
What exactly is the definition of permaculture?
Permaculture is mostly understood in agricultural terms, but basically it's a 12-step cycle of inputs and feedbacks and energy steps feeding each other. So you create more energy than you use. And so like I want to put up a aquaponic swimming pool. And in permaculture, if you can have more than one use for something, that's a permaculture concept, right? So my swimming pool will raise fish in it, will raise plants in it, it'll be a water backup supply, and it'll be recreation. So I've hit 4 things with my permaculture swimming pool, right? So it's kind of a lifestyle, but it's largely, understood to be a gardening and agricultural lifestyle, but it can apply to almost anything. Yeah. Then there's also biodynamic, which is another term that I'm not sure many people understand. It's a very I don't want to say intensive way of gardening to make sure that everything gets exactly what it needs. So it's really more for the, I don't want to say for the professional, but if you want to do biodynamic gardening, it's going to take a little bit more effort and education, but the benefits are phenomenal. I mean, the nutrient quality of this food. So it's based in the Waldorf principles, right? Rudolf Steiner, and I may have it. Is it biodynamic? I may have the word wrong, but he has a whole book on agriculture with all the principles that he used. I mean, you do stuff. You plant according to the stars. So there's a time to plant the roots and a time to transplant the roots, depending on where the planets are in the sky.
Nice.
And then you do other things, like you put cow manure in a horn and bury it through the winter. And then by spring, it's got all of the right energy and micronutrients and stuff that your garden needs to just start thriving and creating really nutrient dense food. Because our food, even if it looks beautiful, it's very depleted of the minerals because our soils are so depleted.
Even if it has an organic logo on it, on the packaging in Safeway or your mainstream grocery store, doesn't mean that it's actually it's healthy and it's got the nutrients in it for sure.
Right.
Most of the food in the grocery stores is stagnant food for sure.
Yeah. So if you're doing a home garden, the one thing I would recommend is find somebody or figure it out for yourself. It's not that hard. Is figure out how to do the compost tea applications, because that puts in the bacteria and the fungi that get into the soil, make the soil really healthy. The soil retains water, so you don't need to water as much. It helps break down all the minerals, make them bioavailable to the plants. Right? So the plants and the fungi and the bacteria have this symbiotic relationship where they feed each other. And when your soil is alive like that, your plants are much healthier. So,
and you're dealing with the largest species on the planet, which is fungi, and getting into mushrooms in that category. I mean, it opens up all these different health benefits, and that's a huge topic, but that's something else that I do as well. I try to identify mushrooms and check that out, foraging. And I was going to say too, Suzanne, because you said, try to find someone. And I think that's a good solution is once you're getting into this state of mind, reaching out to your local community and trying to find like-minded individuals where you guys can collaborate. Maybe doing the home gardening isn't your thing. Maybe you liked some type of carpentry or whatever, but ultimately it's getting involved with your community on the same principles.
right. Each one of us can't do everything alone. So if one person's good at carpentry, well, good. You build the raised beds. When we get to the education next time, one of my factors there is internships for kids. So like with my young son, I want to get him intern to make the compost tea and spray it, because he's perfectly capable of doing that right now at 13 years old.
Yeah.
It's 1 or 2 hours of work. You only need it once or twice a year. And, he can make a decent amount of money doing that. And people are like, thank God I don't have to worry about that one. The neighbor kid's going to come take care of it.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's great.
So
for sure.
So the other one of the big five that we're going to touch on is the law. And we've touched a little bit on it on this show. A lot of people find the legal system very daunting. And again, that's how it's set up to be. It's just a bunch of trickery and word magic and And so, yeah, we've, we talked with Mike on one of our episodes, and he talked about different approaches. It's definitely something where you have to just dive in and start learning from all these different approaches online. But Suzanne, what are some of the better people that you've listened to and approaches that you've found in terms of opting out of the legal system, and the different ways of doing that?
Yeah, so I've got probably 20 books on the subject, and what I recognize now in hindsight is they all do say pretty much the same thing, but because I was reading basically a foreign language, I didn't recognize it for a while. The podcaster that I think is the best at staying on top of it is Crow 777. So it's CRROW777radio.com.
I love Crow.
Yeah, so in the resources of my document, which I guess you guys will post, you can look that up and get more information. I've listed 3 podcasts that are recent ones where they talk about the affidavit. And a properly written set of affidavits can get you out of the statutory victimless BS that we find ourselves in frequently. This guy's proved it. They shut the courts down one day so that they didn't have to deal with them.
Mm,
That's like
yeah.
crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're starting to run scared, because when we stand in our power and our authority and we know what our rights are, they know better because they know natural law too. And they know that if we know our rights and they violate them without our consent, they're paying the karmic debt. Right?
Yeah.
So they manufacture our consent so they can do all this abuse without getting the karmic debt, which I still don't know that I believe that they're not going to pay for it, but they believe it. So,
Yeah.
And we suffer, but we don't have to suffer anymore.
Yeah,
So.
for sure.
And we've also done a lot of work with, well, not work with, but studying the Empower movement, the notice of liability, which, Empower has started based on this document that Cal Washington made, where he basically, you just serve a notice of liability on these companies that are implementing vaccines. You could send it to the politicians or the company itself, local politicians, anyone involved, and basically put them on notice that they are liable for any harm they cause. And it's meant to actually keep you out of the courts, but
Right.
it's another approach. And that website actually, they seem like pretty honest people. They haven't launched their actual site yet, but if you get a membership, you have access to a lot of information on merchant law and just his approach to this problem that we have of being entangled in this legal system.
Yeah, so those are 2 different tools for different circumstances, right? So the notice liability is really good for the things that are kind of bigger than us and not personally directed at us. Whereas the affidavit is if you get, a traffic ticket or you're being harassed by, local agencies. So it's directed specifically at you. That's where the affidavit makes them back right off. So they're both very valuable tools.
Yeah. And ultimately the legal system is humans playing God, right? They want to be the arbiters of rights, which that's an illusion and that's a falsity. So again, they play off your fear and ignorance. So it's good to look at this type of information. The true law is in nature, natural law, God's law, and ultimately, I don't think they actually bypass the karmic repercussion. They do get some of it, but they're cutting it down quite a bit because you are consenting. People don't have this knowledge, so they're doing it onto themselves. So, and it's no mistake that they have their own language with that as well, the legalese language. Get a
Exactly.
Black's Law dictionary. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's frightening, actually.
Yeah. And ultimately they're making a claim, the claim on your life. You're property to them. You're their product. And you're the citizens, the persons, all these terms.
Right.
And unfortunately this has been going on for a long time.
It's interesting working through this stuff on the lawful level and understanding the different categories of law and what type of law we're under. It's it seems like frivolous sometimes, or it feels like you're trying to fix the system from within the system, but really there's something spiritual to it as well. And as you uncover the layers, it's interesting because when you talk to people about this, most people will say, you have to study this on your own. I'm not giving you legal advice. Like, everyone sort of does it on their own. They find that strength. They claim their rights under the creator, and they understand at least on some level how they've been duped, and they find a way to stand up to the system, and the system does back down in some cases. In some cases it doesn't work. But that you guys know David Rodriguez. He's gets in a lot of situations where he's confronting it head on, and with Mike dealing with his situation, and everyone's learning as they go. And some of the things even you want to opt out of, for example, like if you want to opt out of paying taxes, well, can you find a way to you know show them that there is no law that you actually have to pay taxes, or claim that,
That's where the affidavit comes in.
right?
I really think that's the answer to it.
Yeah. To use a matrix, the allegory, it's like Neo, he goes into the matrix and he creates change, and he can act in the matrix itself, but also he's doing the real world change as well. And I think that's what detachment activism is all about. It's about detaching from the illusion, the system, the beast. But the activism is actually action, and you're putting action into actual real world change by changing yourself and creating these benefits for the community.
Right.
Another term that you could use with it too is apophatic, right? Where getting to the truth through the apophatic process of what it isn't, right? Like, so you're getting rid of all the stuff that's not true, that doesn't serve us, that doesn't doesn't help us. It's working against us. It's us participating in the system and participating with the beast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's one of the issues I always have talking to people about this is like, well, then, what's the truth? And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you don't know what the truth is. I mean, in natural law, you do know what the truth is, but things external, like things going on out in the world, we may not know the truth. We may not know the truth of how many votes Trump and Biden each got. We may never know that truth. But what we do know is the lies. The lies and the falsities are very easy to spot. And like you're saying, John, you pull that all away, and there's a lot less left to sift through. And that's a skill that I think we need to share more frequently with people, so that people run around chasing their tail trying to find the truth, and looking at the news reports trying to find the truth, and arguing with each other incessantly. And we may never know the truth, but we can see the lies and we can set them aside.
I think it's created to do that on purpose, right? To keep internal confusion. So you're battling yourself, you're battling others. There's the divide, and it's all a facade, right? That's what we say, John. Politics is theater.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed to do. So, and I'm an extremist when it comes to detachment activism. So, no taxes, no healthcare. You got to go. You got to go all the way. Why? Because the system itself is illegitimate and immoral, and it's creating chaos and suffering for people, and it needs to be depleted. You know,
Starved.
Starve the
starved,
They need to
beast.
starving the
starve the
beast.
beast.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. We got about halfway through our list. Law, all of these topics you can get into much deeper, but I do like the fact that we at least touched on it. And we are planning on coming back for a part 2 in the next few weeks, where we will cover education and banking. And we'll kind of wrap up this topic. I think, again, like you said, Suzanne, and Will, you touched on this too, that kind of showing people, leading the way, like just thinking about this topic. People need to consider it because some people feel stuck in the system and they can't imagine something different. And this is the first step, is thinking in this way, detaching from things that don't serve us, and through that way, um, strengthening the things that do serve us and that are essential.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well said.
All right. Well, thank you, Suzanne. We
Thanks,
Well,
appreciate
thanks
Suzanne.
to
it.
you guys.
And like we always say, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth.
Gia.
Peace.